Ladies and gentlemen, good evening and a very warm welcome to the latest in our series of Doha debates sponsored by the Qatar Foundation. Ever since the 2001 attacks on the World Trade Center, the so-called war on terror has been a dominating feature of international relations. It spawned new alliances, but also new violence and new hatreds. So is it a fight to protect Western freedoms or a battle against a religion and ideology that the West doesn't understand? The motion tonight is that this House believes the war on terror has become a war against Islam, and you'll hear some pretty impassioned arguments both for and against that proposition. But as always, at the end of the debate, it's you, the audience, who will give your verdict and have the final say. On my right, and in favor of the motion, Anas Altikriti. He's a founder and former president of the Muslim Association of Britain. He campaigned actively against the war in Iraq and is a frequent commentator and writer on Middle Eastern affairs. Also in favor, Dr. Mustafa Ceric, who as Grand Mufti of Bosnia needs very little introduction. For 2 million Muslims in the Balkans, he is the leading Islamic legal authority. But tonight, he's content to just fight it out as a panelist. Against the motion, we have from New York, Feisal Abdul Rauf. He's author of the book, What's Right with Islam. He's also founder of the Cordoba Initiative, designed to improve relations between the US and the Muslim world. But his day job is Imam at a mosque just a dozen blocks away from Ground Zero. With him to oppose is Ramzi Khoury, a former editor of the Arab Daily. He's now a communications advisor to a number of Arab governments. Let's hope that doesn't make him too careful about what he says tonight. Ladies and gentlemen, our panel. And now let me call first of all on Anas Altikriti to speak for the motion, please.
Thank you very much. Whilst the war on terror may have started with multi-objectives, several layers of aims and targets and the such, there can be little doubt that over recent times, possibly over the past 2.5 years, all those have gone to the sidelines, and what is left as a predominant objective, and that is to fight not only Muslims in their physical presence and existence, but also Islam in the set of principles, its codes, its essence, and its context. Now, whilst I'm the first to admit that this is a very complex issue, but I would like to try to simplify it as much as possible by referring to three matters that drive this war on terror. The first being the ideology. There can be little question that when the likes of Henry Kissinger, Richard Pearl, Daniel Pipes and the such speak of the necessity for the West to recognize that it is fighting a set of ideology, not just some savages that are hiding in caves, we have to pay attention. It is essential that we realize that this is an ideological, idea-driven war against Islam. And there is a recognition and acknowledgement that Islam represents not only physical presence, but also that set of ideas and principles. The second matter is the discourse. Who amongst us can actually turn the other way when the British Prime Minister or the United States President speak that it is the extreme straight of Islam that represents the actual enemy to the West, an enemy to the ways and lifestyles of the West? Who of us can actually turn to the other way when the likes of the Italian Prime Minister say that the Western civilization is superior to Islamic civilization and that it is going to defeat it? We can't. And finally, practice. However loud I speak tonight, I will never be able to speak louder than the guns, the fighter jets, and the bullets in the presence of hundreds of thousands of American and Western troops in countries such as Afghanistan and Iraq, and guns that are targeting other countries such as Iran, Syria, Sudan, Pakistan, amongst many others. My friends, there can be little doubt that this war on terror has gradually but surely changed and transformed into a war on Islam. Thank you very much.
Anas Altikriti, thank you very much indeed. You talked about a predominant objective to fight Muslims. Was it a hostile act to arrange free elections in Afghanistan and Iraq when there weren't any in Iraq for decades?
In a sense, it was neither. elections
So you're going to sit on the fence here?
I'm not going to sit on the fence.
You accuse the West of waging a war on Islam, but when I give you 2 examples, you sit on the fence and say it's not.
No, an election that's whereby the voters have no idea who the candidates are is not an election with due respect, Tim.
Millions of people in Iraq voted, didn't they? Millions.
Well, they voted simply because out of hope and desperation, rather than anything else. The reality is that in the United Kingdom, we've had our elections, and if I was going to be voting for a number rather than a name and a face and a manifesto, I wouldn't be pleased at all. Why is it that the Iraqi people or the Afghanis should be pleased that they vote for numbers? I don't think they should.
So they're not free-thinking? You have a pretty low opinion of Islamic
absolutely
thought.
Not. In fact, I think that what we're seeing throughout not only the Arab but the Muslim world, and particularly in Iraq and such, I see that there is a wave of not only intellectual and liberal thinking in order to face and to counter that campaign, but also there is another force that is resisting that kind of imposition of the westernization of Islam and Muslims.
You talked about comments by Tony Blair and President Bush. Let me just want to comment by you. We cannot clear our names unless we own up to the shameful fact that terrorism has become an Islamic enterprise, an almost exclusive monopoly implemented by Muslim men and women. That's not from Tony Blair or President Bush. That's from the boss of Al-Arabiya, Abdurrahman al-Rashid.
Well, I'm pretty sure that Mr. al-Rashid and I would differ immensely on various issues. However, I would be the very first to admit that every single ideology, every religion has its 3 straits. It has its liberals, it has its fundamentals, and it has its mainstream moderates.
Anas Altikriti, thank you very much indeed. Imam Feisal Abdul Rauf.
I'd like to begin, Tim, by pointing out that terrorism has been defined by experts of political science as the targeting of innocent civilians in order to achieve political ends. This has happened since the beginning of time, even since the beginning of the Roman Emperor. Our role as the religious voices are to be the conscience of our communities. There are 2 Islams, you might say. There is the Islam that was taught by the Prophet Muhammad, by his companions, Abu Bakr, Umar, Uthman, and Ali, and his noble companions, what we call the Islam of as-Salaf as-Salih, the pious predecessors. And we have the Islam of the Khawarij. The Islam of the Prophet Muhammad is based upon the Quranic commandment to him and the statement that God did not send Muhammad except to be a mercy to humankind, ar-rahmatan lil-alameen, not to be ar-rahbatan lil-alameen, not to be a terrorizer of humanity. Very briefly, Tim, the Khawarij was the first phenomenon in Islamic history. It was a group that developed a takfiri political philosophy, that which identified anyone who disagreed with them as being